She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion never wavered. Through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and that couldn't be more true for King Charles. At 73, he officially became king after the passing of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. But since taking the throne, it's been one royal drama after another, yet none compare to a secret the monarchy has tried to bury for decades. Now at 75, King Charles seems ready to reveal and confirm the truth that's haunted the royal family for years. So what did he reveal? And why is he speaking up now? Stick around for all the juicy details. King Charles's revelation. At 75, King Charles makes a revelation that shakes the very foundation of the British monarchy, a truth that's been buried under decades of royal silence. His life has always been a mix of privilege and scandal, from his rise to the throne to his turbulent relationship with his children and, of course, his marriage to Camilla. But nothing, absolutely nothing, comes close to the storm his recent revelations have stirred. The question now is, what exactly did King Charles reveal? And could this finally change the way the world sees the royal family? Let's dive in. When it comes to royal love stories, none has ever burnt brighter or ended messier than that of Charles, Diana, and Camilla. It was the triangle that defined an era, one that blurred the line between royal duty and forbidden passion. While Charles and Camilla may have eventually found their way back to each other, Diana was left to pick up the shattered pieces, to smile through heartbreak, to raise her sons, and to serve her country with quiet dignity. But behind that public image, Diana carried pain that very few truly understood, and it began long before the world ever knew. King Charles's revelation brings one particular moment back to light.
I began to realize, what was going on in my mind and hers in particular.
A scene Diana once described as the point her marriage truly ended. It happened in 1984, inside the private Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington, just hours after she gave birth to her second son, Prince Harry. What should have been one of the happiest moments of her life became a memory she could never forget. As Charles visited his newborn son for the first time, Diana told her trusted confidant, Paul Burrell, that he looked into the baby's cot and made a comment that cut her deeply. He reportedly observed that Harry had red hair, something Diana immediately explained was a Spencer family trait. But then came the remark that shattered her heart completely. According to Diana, Charles turned and said he finally had his heir and spare and could now return to Camilla. Those words, as Paul later revealed in his book, The Royal Insider, left Diana stunned. She wasn't oblivious to her husband's feelings for Camilla. By then, that ghost had long haunted their marriage. But the timing, the coldness, and the lack of empathy in that moment were something she never forgot. She had just endured childbirth. She was 23, vulnerable, emotional, and yearning for affection. Instead,
in reality, she was chastised by the media and stifled by the conservative royal family.
She got confirmation that her husband's love had always belonged elsewhere. Years later, Diana confided in Paul about that painful night. She told him she cried herself to sleep, realizing that her marriage had already ended, only 4 years after it began. She described those early years as her giving everything she could to make the marriage work. But the moment Charles walked out of that hospital room, she knew the illusion was over. From that night on, she wore the crown of heartbreak, pretending to the world that everything was fine, while inside, she was unraveling. Charles, who was 36 at the time, reportedly viewed their marriage as complete once he had fulfilled his duty to produce an heir and a spare. What followed were years of distance and private despair. By 1986, both were living separate lives, bound only by their children and their public roles. Charles's ongoing affair with Camilla continued behind the scenes, further eroding what little was left of their union. By 1992, the fairy tale had officially crumbled.
Can you tell me if there's any possibility? No, but I'm not going to say anything, babe.
That same year, remembered by Queen Elizabeth as her annus horribilis, the world watched as Charles and Diana separated. marking the end of a royal marriage that had once captured global fascination. Now, decades later, with King Charles reflecting on his life and reign, this old wound has resurfaced, and the truth behind it still carries emotional weight. His decision to speak about the past isn't just about confession, it's about reckoning. The monarchy, long built on secrecy and restraint, is being forced to confront the pain that has lingered behind closed doors. And as the public draws parallels between Charles's strained relationship with his younger son, Prince Harry, and the echoes of the past, the timing couldn't be more symbolic. Just recently, the pair reportedly met for a brief 55-minute reunion, a meeting that left more questions than answers. So as the world watches King Charles reveal pieces of a story long hidden, one thing becomes clear: time may heal, but history never forgets. What happened in that hospital room all those years ago still lingers, not just as a memory of heartbreak, but as a reminder that even in the most powerful family on earth, love and pain often share the same crown. But to truly understand the depth of this royal saga, the most historic love triangle, all hell broke loose in 1995 during Princess Diana's explosive panorama interview with journalist Martin Bashir, an interview that would change the course of royal history. Sitting under those harsh BBC studio lights, Diana delivered the line that shook the world. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. And just like that, the royal mask shattered. Everyone knew who the third person was: Camilla Parker Bowles, the woman who had been linked to Prince Charles long before Diana ever stepped into the picture. To understand just how deep this story runs, we have to go back to the beginning, long before the fairy tale wedding, before the scandals, before the heartbreak. The year was 1970, and a young Prince Charles met Camilla Shand through a mutual friend, Lucia Santa Cruz. From the very start, Camilla wasn't shy about her charm or her history. Reports claim her opening line to Charles was, "My great-grandmother was the mistress of your great-great-grandfather." I feel we have something in common. If that story is true, it's safe to say Camilla didn't just walk in quietly. She walked in with confidence and a twinkle in her eye. The pair began dating shortly after that meeting.
On the 9th of April 2005, Charles and Camilla married in a civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall.
But when Charles left to serve in the Royal Navy, duty pulled them apart. Camilla, never one to wait around, moved on. In 1973, she married British Army officer Andrew Parker Bowles in what seemed like a perfect society match. But here's the twist: Charles stayed close, very close. So close that he was named godfather to Camilla's son, Tom. It took 7 years for Charles to find his own bride. That's where Lady Diana Spencer, the shy kindergarten assistant with the kind smile and innocent eyes, comes in. Their engagement in 1981 should have been a royal dream come true, but cracks began to show even before the wedding bells rang. When Charles was asked if he was in love, he replied with the now infamous line, "Whatever love means." Not exactly the romantic reassurance anyone wants before walking down the aisle. Just days before the wedding, Diana's fairy tale started to crumble. She stumbled upon a specially designed bracelet meant for Camilla, engraved with their secret pet names, F and G, short for Fred and Gladys, inspired by a comedy sketch from The Goon Show.
Nature is a separate thing from us, and we can just exploit and control and suppress.
That discovery left her devastated. According to reports, Camilla also gave Charles a pair of cufflinks engraved with CC for Charles and Camilla. And yes, Charles proudly wore them on their honeymoon. Subtlety clearly wasn't his strong suit. By 1986, the affair that never truly ended was back in full swing. Diana, heartbroken and increasingly isolated, decided she'd had enough of the whispers. In 1989, she confronted Camilla directly. In her private recordings later shared with biographer Andrew Morton, Diana recalled telling Camilla she knew what was going on between her and Charles and wanted her to know that she wasn't blind to it. Camilla reportedly replied that Diana had everything she could ever want: fame, adoration, and 2 beautiful sons, and asked what more she could possibly need. Diana's response was simple: She wanted her husband. She apologized for being in the way, admitting that she understood the situation but refused to be treated like a fool. Despite that confrontation, nothing really changed. The royal family urged Diana and Charles to stay together, and for a while, they played their parts. But behind the palace doors, their marriage was little more than a performance. Then came the scandal that no amount of royal damage control could contain: Tampongate. In 1992, the British public woke up to a shocking tabloid revelation. A private, highly intimate phone call between Charles and Camilla, recorded in 1989 by an amateur radio enthusiast, had been leaked. The transcript revealed Charles joking that he wished he could be Camilla's tampon, an image no one asked for and no one could unhear. The Daily Mirror published the transcript in full and even set up phone lines so readers could listen to the entire conversation. Overnight, Charles's reputation tanked. Desperate to save face, he agreed to a televised interview in 1994 with journalist Jonathan Dimbleby. When asked if he had been faithful and honorable to Diana, Charles admitted that he had been until it became irretrievably broken down. It was the closest thing to a public confession, and it sent shockwaves across Britain. He added that Camilla had been a friend for a very long time and would continue to be one. At that point,
We cannot help but think of those for whom the devastating effects of conflict.
no one was buying the just friends narrative anymore. Diana's response came loud and clear the following year in her Panorama interview, the same one that became a global television event. She spoke openly about her marriage, her struggles, and the emotional pain of living with betrayal. And while she didn't name names beyond that now famous line, the world didn't need her to. Everyone knew exactly who she meant. In 1995, Camilla's marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles officially ended. By then, the royal family's dirty laundry had been aired in every newspaper and news program imaginable. Queen Elizabeth finally decided enough was enough, and by 1996, Charles and Diana's divorce was finalized. After Diana's tragic death in 1997, the monarchy faced one of its darkest moments. Public anger towards Charles and Camilla was fierce, and the couple had to keep a low profile for years. They didn't make a public appearance together until 1999, when they attended a birthday party at London's Ritz Hotel. Paparazzi swarmed the scene, capturing their every move.
So you can't be the same as the sovereign if you're the Prince of Wales or the heir.
It was the unofficial debut of their relationship in the public eye. Slowly, the tide began to turn. A year later, Camilla was introduced to the Queen at a private event in Greece, the ultimate sign that the royal frost was thawing. By February 2005, Charles and Camilla were ready to make it official. Their engagement was announced to mixed reactions, and their wedding took place that April in a modest civil ceremony in Windsor. The Queen and Prince Philip did not attend, but she gave her blessing privately, explaining that, while she supported the marriage, her role as head of the Church of England made attending inappropriate. Time, as always, worked its quiet magic. Camilla's public image softened through years of charity work and quiet dedication. And, in February 2022, just months before her passing, Queen Elizabeth issued a statement that sealed Camilla's transformation in royal history. She expressed her sincere wish that when the time came, Camilla would be known as Queen Consort, a gesture that marked full acceptance from the boss herself. When Charles finally became king in September 2022, Camilla officially became Queen Consort, a title that once seemed impossible. King Charles's reign. A year after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, Charles didn't come roaring into power with sweeping changes or bold declarations. Instead, he slipped seamlessly into the throne, patient, prepared, and cautious. The man who once spoke his mind on everything from climate change to architecture seemed to have learnt the royal art of restraint. His first year as king was not about shaking the table, but about steadying it. Even his occasional blunders, like the moment caught on camera when he lost his temper over an ornate pen case during a signing ceremony, did little to damage his image. Most people brushed it off, choosing instead to focus on the wins. His state visit to Germany was a clear highlight, where he charmed lawmakers by switching effortlessly between English and German. Observers like royal biographer Sally Bedell Smith noted that Charles's reign so far reflected subtle evolution, not revolution. She described it as a continuation of Queen Elizabeth's legacy, only with Charles's personal touches sprinkled in. The monarch, known for wanting to modernize the institution, had apparently realized that the throne is not a stage for loud ideas, but a platform for quiet influence. Charles's desire to streamline the monarchy, to cut costs, reduce public spending, and trim the list of working royals has long been known. Yet, in his first year, there were no grand restructures or sweeping reforms, no sign of Buckingham Palace being overhauled. Instead, his focus remained on connection, building bridges at home and abroad, and nurturing the relationships his mother spent a lifetime protecting. From visiting all 4 nations of the United Kingdom to meeting with faith communities across Britain, Charles worked to portray a monarchy that listens. He welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to London and embarked on a diplomatic tour of Germany that strengthened ties between the two countries. It was a performance in soft power, the kind of quiet statesmanship his mother had mastered. When Charles became sovereign on September 8, 2022, following the Queen's death, he immediately faced the impossible task of stepping into the shoes of a woman who had defined an era. His first speech to the nation the following day set the tone for his reign. He paid homage to his mother's balance of tradition and progress, reminding the nation that her reign had shown how history and change could coexist. In that moment, he promised to serve all people, wherever they lived, whatever they believed. Charles also acknowledged that being king would mean stepping back from the activism that had once defined him. Conservation and environmental protection, causes he had championed for decades, would now be passed down to Prince William. He encouraged his son to lead the national conversation on issues that matter, to bring the marginal to the center ground, where real change can happen. William accepted that mission wholeheartedly, launching new efforts to fight homelessness and continue his father's work on climate action. The beginning of Charles's reign was shadowed by mourning. Britain gathered for the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, a historic farewell to the only monarch most people had ever known. The sound of the Queen's piper playing his final lament filled Westminster Abbey before the congregation rose in unison for the national anthem. For the first time in 70 years, the words were different. God save our gracious King. It was a turning point, the end of one era, and the cautious beginning of another. During his first Christmas broadcast as monarch, Charles showcased a Britain that had evolved. His message reflected diversity and inclusion, featuring clips of his visits across the kingdom, including a visit to a Sikh temple in Luton. It was a gentle but deliberate acknowledgement of the multicultural nation he now represents, one where over 300 languages are spoken in classrooms across the country. Then came the coronation in May 2023, the grand moment the world had waited for. Sitting in the ancient 700-year-old coronation chair at Westminster Abbey, Charles was crowned with a dazzling jewel-encrusted crown before being anointed with holy oil in a private ritual shielded from cameras. Yet even in that moment steeped in ancient ritual, Charles made history by inviting non-Christian faith leaders to participate for the first time, signaling a monarchy willing to reflect the faiths of modern Britain. While presidents, prime ministers, and royals filled the pews, there were also seats for everyday people, volunteers, educators, and youth leaders from across the country. It was Charles's subtle way of blending royal grandeur with real humanity, of proving that the crown still belongs, at least in part, to the people. But the monarchy itself is facing new pressures. In a modern, media-driven world, the old rule of never explain, never complain feels increasingly outdated. The public wants transparency, answers about royal finances, accountability, and representation. There are also growing demands for the palace to acknowledge its historical ties to slavery and colonialism. Some of these calls are amplified by Prince Harry and Meghan's public criticism of the institution in their book and television series. Meanwhile, Republican movements across Commonwealth realms are growing louder, with nations questioning whether they still need a British monarch as their head of state. Experts like Joe Little from Majesty magazine, predict that Charles's reign will likely end with fewer realms under his crown, just as it did for his mother. But to understand how Charles got here, how a man once considered the most misunderstood royal in Britain became king, we need to go back to where it all began. Background on King Charles. King Charles III was born Charles Philip Arthur George on November 14, 1948 in London. The oldest of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip's 4 children, his destiny was sealed before he could even walk. Charles has no official last name. As a prince, he never needed one, but if he ever did, he could go by Charles Windsor, after the House of Windsor. His father's surname was Mountbatten, and his mother decided that her descendants could use a combination of both names, Mountbatten-Windsor. That's why, when his sister Princess Anne got married in 1973, she signed her name as Anne Mountbatten-Windsor. Royals also sometimes use their titles as surnames. Charles's sons, William and Harry, used Wales as their last name while in school and during their military service. From the very start, Charles lived under the world's gaze. In 1952, when his grandfather, King George VI, died, his mother became Queen Elizabeth II, and Charles, at just 3 years old, became the heir apparent. He was given the title Duke of Cornwall, the first of many titles he would collect. By then, he had a little sister, Princess Anne, and later 2 more siblings, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward, born in 1960 and 1964. Today, Anne and Edward remain steadfast members of the royal family, balancing duty with grace. Both serve as counselors of state, meaning they can step in temporarily for King Charles when needed. Prince Andrew, however, lost that privilege after his ties to Jeffrey Epstein ignited one of the biggest scandals in modern royal history. By 2022, he had been stripped of his military titles and patronages and quietly faded into royal obscurity, though he remains 8th in line to the throne. Edward stands at number 14, while Anne holds the 17th spot. Charles's childhood was one of both privilege and pressure. In 1956, he began attending Hill House in London, a school known for its discipline and rigor. The following year, he was sent to Cheam, a boarding school that shaped his early sense of independence. At just 9 years old, he was officially invested as the Prince of Wales and Earl of Chester, solidifying his path to kingship. In 1962, he moved to Gordonstoun in Scotland, the same school his father once attended. Known for its tough regime, Gordonstoun focused on resilience, outdoor challenges, and self-reliance, values Philip believed were essential for a future monarch. Later, Charles traveled to Melbourne, Australia as an exchange student, where he experienced, perhaps for the first time, a taste of freedom far from palace walls. By 1967, he began his studies at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he pursued archaeology, anthropology, and history. Charles became the first heir apparent in British history to earn a university degree. At Cambridge, he threw himself into university life, joining theater groups, playing polo, and mingling with classmates who treated him, at least somewhat, like a regular student. Those years gave him a brief but meaningful glimpse of normality, something rare for a royal born into duty. After graduating in 1970, Charles began a military career that would define much of his young adulthood. He trained with the Royal Air Force for 6 months before joining the Royal Navy in 1971. He served aboard the HMS Norfolk and later became a helicopter pilot with the 845 Naval Air Squadron on the HMS Hermes. His time at sea took him from the Caribbean to Canada, and by 1976, he had completed his service as commander of the HMS Brownington. Even after leaving full-time service, he stayed active in the military, training as a parachutist and occasionally flying the Queen's Flight. His dedication earned him promotions throughout the years, culminating in his appointment as Air Chief Marshal of the Royal Air Force in 2000. Despite his accomplishments, Charles often came across to the public as serious, reflective, and at times socially awkward, traits that stood in sharp contrast to the magnetic charm of the woman who would soon capture the world's heart. Lady Diana Spencer. Their wedding on July 29, 1981, was a global spectacle. Broadcast to hundreds of millions, it was a true fairy tale moment. Diana, radiant in her ivory silk gown, became the Princess of Wales and the People's Princess, beloved for her warmth and humanity. The couple's first son, Prince William, was born in June 1982, followed by Prince Harry in September 1984. But behind the palace walls, the fairy tale quickly unraveled. The pressures of royal life, media intrusion, and their very different personalities strained their relationship. By the early 1990s, their marriage had become a carefully managed illusion. Rumors of infidelity on both sides dominated tabloids until their separation in 1992 and official divorce in 1996. Then, tragedy struck. In August 1997, Diana died in a car crash in Paris, and the world mourned. In the years that followed, Charles focused on his sons and his philanthropic work. His relationship with William strengthened, but his connection with Harry became strained, especially after Harry and Meghan Markle left royal life and moved to California in 2020. Harry's public remarks about feeling let down by his father only deepened the rift. Stability eventually came through Camilla Parker Bowles, the woman once vilified as the reason behind his failed marriage. Charles and Camilla married on April 9, 2005, in a quiet civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall, followed by a blessing at St. George's Chapel. Over time, Camilla's unwavering support and genuine charm won over both the public and the royal family. Beyond his royal duties, Charles has built one of the most extensive charitable portfolios of any royal in history. In 1976, he founded the Prince's Trust to support disadvantaged youth, later expanding its reach globally. The Prince of Wales's charitable fund, launched in 1979, and Duchy Originals, founded in 1990, further demonstrated his passion for sustainable development and organic living. The Prince's Foundation, established in 1986, continues to promote education, heritage, and the arts. An environmentalist long before the cause became popular, Charles launched the Prince's Rainforest Project in 2007, later expanding its mission to protect oceans and reduce plastic pollution. His lifelong dedication to the planet cemented his reputation as a forward-thinking monarch. In 2022, headlines surfaced when reports revealed that Charles had accepted large cash donations, including one delivered in a duffel bag from a former Qatari prime minister for his charitable fund. Though not illegal, the revelation reignited debates about royal accountability. When he became king in September 2022, Charles wasted no time in reshaping his legacy. In 2023, his long-standing charities were rebranded to reflect his new role. The Prince's Trust became the King's Trust, and the Prince's Foundation became the King's Foundation. That same year, he launched the Coronation Food Project, a nationwide initiative to tackle hunger by reducing food waste, a cause deeply personal to him. For King Charles III, the crown was never just a symbol of power. It was a lifelong burden of purpose. From the boy groomed for greatness to the man who finally claimed his destiny, one thing has always remained constant: his determination to use the monarchy not merely as an inheritance, but as a platform to serve, to protect, and to endure. What are your thoughts on the British monarchy? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.